Hi, this is Scott Ross and from Resilient Ecology Systems and Design, and today we're going to be talking about the first six of the 12 permaculture principles. A lot of times these permaculture principles are expressed kind of as a cycle. It's an iterative thing that you never really finish going through. And we're going to talk about these permaculture principles and how they apply specifically, maybe in some ways, to Northern Arizona, or just some thoughts that come to mind when we're talking about these first six principles for Northern Arizona. So the first permaculture principle is to observe and interact with nature. And this sounds, this can be pretty common sense. It's before you go about making a change or designing something, you want to observe what's actually going on. You need to observe what's going on naturally at the property. And, this can be a variety of things. For example, if you have a property that has this perpetual dry spot, it's good to observe and to realize, hey, this spot's dry. But by maybe spending a little bit more time observing nature, you can start to see, okay, this spot really gets a lot of the wind, which in northern Arizona, we're all familiar with wind and sun. And, slope is another thing that can cause a dry aspect. So if you have a north facing slope that all the water just runs off, the sun, especially in the summer, since it's north facing, is going to be baking that area. And the mountains are to the north here in Flagstaff, so you're getting potential winds directly from the north. That area is going to end up really dry. So that's part of observing and interacting, starting to look at the systems before you make a change. The second permaculture principle is to catch and store energy. This can happen in a variety of ways. It makes sense that if someone was to throw dollar bills at you, you wouldn't just let those go through your fingers. But here with our landscapes, a lot of times we have something that's just as valuable with energy literally slipping right through our fingers sometimes. And this can happen in a few different ways. There's so many resources that we have as far as sun, wind, water, potential energy, and we should be doing what we can to catch this. In Flagstaff, in areas that especially have a lot of slope, we can get some pretty big rains during the summer monsoon season and some pretty decent sized snows. Now, what happens is a lot of people give up that free energy of all the water that's melting on their property because that water is melting up high and it's just flowing down the hill, causing sometimes erosion and other problems when really they could be storing that energy by creating some kind of catchment or, like such as a pond or a swale or something that's going to store that water up at the top of the landscape where it's coming. It can happen with water, can happen with wind. We've got renewable wind resources, especially here in Flagstaff with the wind. Flagstaff is also blessed with lots of sunlight. So, there's many, many ways besides photovoltaics that you can catch sunlight. One of the main ways is plants. Plants are a great way to store energy. So if you have a bare patch of earth, permaculture, this permaculture principle is in part saying that that needs to be a way to catch the energy of the sun that's hitting that earth. So we can store energy in plants. We can store it through, wind energy. We can store it through holding water higher up in our landscapes. There are many ways to, practice this second permaculture principle. Moving on to number three, get a yield. Permaculture principle number three talks about getting something out of our system. And this hands-off approach for a lot of ecologically minded people, where nature is something that can be seen but not touched. Like don't touch the nature, is not really sustainable because it's as long as humans are a part of this world, we can't really separate the nature and the humans. The permaculture design aims to integrate the two of them. So, if humans are going to be a part of nature, we need to be able to obviously get our living off of it. We need to be able to get our sustenance from nature. And we can't be trying to, push our sustenance away just, out of sight, out of mind. We need to be, having these landscapes that actually provide something useful for us. And that's called obtaining a yield. We need to be cycling these yields too, so that we are, taking things from one yield, and when we end up with excess at the end, this goes back to the first episode that we did, where we talked about the permaculture ethics and return of surplus at being the third permaculture ethic. We need to find a way to cycle our yields so that we can produce more yields and a diverse set of yields. So I think that that's pretty good on yields. The fourth permaculture principle is talking about self-regulating and accepting feedback. So when we have, potentially a landscape or really anything else, the permaculture principles are talking about noticing what's going on and starting to adjust our behavior in accordance with what's happening. So, for instance, something that is, pretty noticeable for most people is when you start to put on a lot of weight. That is a feedback that your body is giving you, like, hey, we're ending up with a lot of calories here. Maybe we should find something to do with it, or maybe we better store these calories just in case there's a huge famine. So, gaining weight for a lot of people is a form of feedback that encourages some kind of regulation on their part. So, in the same way this happens, with our landscapes, is let's say that someone who's growing a lot of corn, or just some corn. Let's hope that it's not a monoculture, but if you have a lot of corn and you're storing that, and you end up with a rodent problem, well, the rodents may be indicative of an overaccumulation of corn, or just an overaccumulation of excess nutrients, which maybe are going to waste, starting to rot, starting to attract pests, and that should incentivize the owner of that property to potentially sell the corn, to potentially get rid of it, or to find something useful to do with it. Feed it to chickens, feed it to pigs, start to cycle those nutrients in different ways. So let's look at the fifth permaculture principle, which is talking about using and valuing nature's gifts. So a lot of times we don't look at nature as abundantly as nature really is. Up here in Flagstaff, we're blessed with a whole lot of sunlight, pretty moderate temperatures during the summer, at least especially compared with the rest of Arizona. We have 4 seasons. We have a good amount of moisture, especially compared with the rest of the state. And we need to be able to value that. And a lot of people complain about the wind in Flagstaff, but we can learn to appreciate nature's gift of the wind in different ways. I mean, wind is a potential source of energy. It's a potential way to aerate ponds that you have, or to aerate standing water so that it doesn't become stagnant and start to go anaerobic and smell really bad. It can provide cooling energy, and also wind reduces, fungal problems with orchards or fruit trees. If you are, growing plants in Flagstaff, it's, a lot less likely that you're going to have problems with fungus because you're getting that constant, just freshening wind. So learning to appreciate that, learning how to recognize that and take advantage of nature's gifts that you have in your area is an important part of the permaculture principle. And the sixth principle, the last one that we're going to cover today, is produce no waste. So, a lot of people think, oh, what do you mean produce no waste? A lot of our conception of what is waste is just something that we need to truck away. It's something that's, out of sight, out of mind. We flush our toilet and it just goes away somewhere else, somewhere that's not here, so that we don't have to deal with it. We, take our trash out to the dump, or we put it in a trash can, and someone comes and picks it up and takes it away. This sixth permaculture principle is really important because it tries to get us to reframe the way that we see waste. It tries to get us to reframe the way that we conceptualize of our consumption. So, in permaculture, if you are to end up with, let's say a lot of kitchen scraps, well, obviously we should be composting that. It stops being waste once you composting it. It's really turning it into the input for another productive system that's going to give you, hopefully, really great gardening soil. So, at that point, it stops being waste. You can, compost kitchen scraps. You can even compost human manure, safely and without smell. The state of Arizona actually has some really cool programs for doing that, and some really cool guidelines for how to have, composting toilets where you can create high quality soil. And we'll explore that again we'll explore that again in the future, some other things with composting. So that is all that we have for today. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave it in YouTube or check out the website and get in touch with me there. Thanks.